When I was a child, my family was very poor, and my parents went to work far away to earn money to support the family. At that time, I didn't know what my parents were doing in the distance, and they wouldn't tell the family, but they would send money to the family every month. And the money they sent back was getting more and more month by month, starting with 5,000, 10,000, and then 50,000, 100,000. And my family is getting richer and richer. But when I was in my third year of junior high school, a few police officers suddenly came to my house. They told my grandparents that my parents had been arrested for selling drugs at the border. It was also at this time that we realized that my parents were not working outside, but doing illegal things. My parents were sentenced to life in prison by the local court, and they were also left in the local jail to serve their sentences. The money they sent back to their home every month was also confiscated by the police who came to my house, saying that it was obtained through illegal means and needed to be handed over. Since then, my family has lived the same hard life as before. And the news that my parents were arrested for drug trafficking soon spread throughout the township. I also became the target of ridicule for the whole school. None of them wanted to approach me, just because I was the son of a drug dealer. And everywhere I went, people pointed at me, saying that my parents were drug dealers, our family was a drug den, and I was a petty drug dealer. It kept me from looking up for a long time. It may also be the reason why my young heart was hurt by their cold-bloodedness. My personality gradually became very introverted, unwilling to speak, unwilling to communicate, walking with my head down when I walked there, and I was very inferior. Since my family was so poor, my grandparents couldn't afford my tuition, so I was supposed to go to work in society after 9 years of compulsory education. But during the summer vacation of the third year of junior high school, the card that my parents used to send money to the house suddenly had 4,000 yuan in it. And this 4,000 is just enough for my tuition for the first year of high school and my living expenses for the first month. My grandparents were all real farmers, and they didn't know how to go to the bank to check the money. And I was too young to understand that. The neighbors in Jejia Township did not help us, and the money eventually became a mystery. My grandparents hesitated for a long time, but finally decided to give me the money to go to high school. In this way, I successfully entered the first year of high school. And there will be 1,000 yuan in that card every month, and there will be 3,000 yuan more in the card when I pay the tuition fee every semester. I don't know who is helping me, and I don't know where this money comes from. After that, I worked hard to get into college, and due to the increase in tuition, the money in my card was thousands more than when I was in high school every time I paid the tuition. When I was in college, I came to a new city, a new place, and I also fell in love with a girl in my class, Musia. She was as beautiful as her name suggested, and I dreamed of her countless times in my sleep. But because she is the class flower of our class, she has good looks and temperament, and there are many boys around her. But I come from a rural area, a child from a poor family, and I have a very low self-esteem, so there is a sharp contrast between me and her. I can only express my feelings for her by writing a diary every day. But one time I forgot my diary in the classroom and was picked up by one of my roommates. Not only did he read my diary, but he also told me that my parents were drug dealers and that I liked Musia. It didn't take long for my story to spread throughout the class, and naturally Musia also knew about it. After that, I went back to my life in middle and high school, and everywhere I went, people said I was the son of a drug dealer and that I was a toad who wanted to eat swan meat. In the dormitory, several of my roommates were reluctant to talk to me. They all looked down on me, saying that the money for my studies and living expenses were all the extinct money earned by my parents from drug trafficking, and that I would definitely lose my children and grandchildren in the future if I used the money. In the class, all my classmates also looked down on me because my parents were arrested and imprisoned for drug trafficking, and they didn't want to approach me. It's like I'm some kind of unforgivable person, and I have to face their cynicism and contempt blows every day. I've cried, struggled, and cowardly. I don't know why people are so bad, it's my parents who sell drugs, not me. Why they cling to this matter and humiliate me all the time? Why can't they treat me leniently and treat my classmates as equals? For me, my whole college life was gray because I was ridiculed and discriminated against for 4 years. And the goddess, whom I had a crush on for 4 whole years, never said a word to me after that time, and never even looked at me in the eye. But I didn't expect all of that to change on the day I graduated from college. Because that day, the man who had given me money for so many years appeared. He was standing in front of a black Mercedes in a black suit and a big, cool pair of black sunglasses. He asked me to call him Uncle Hua and pick me up in the car. It was only after listening to Uncle Hua in the car that I understood all this. Uncle Hua was a sworn brother of my dad when he was selling drugs at the border. He said that my father was very good at drug trafficking at the border in the past few years, and the business was also very good. But the wood is beautiful in the forest, and the wind will urge it. They were involved in an undercover police officer, and because of that undercover informant, they missed a very important deal. At that time, in order to save Uncle Hua, my father hid Uncle Hua in a dung pit, and then went out and surrendered to the police. And my father also asked Uncle Hua for one thing before leaving, that is, to come back from the border to keep me safe for life. Uncle Hua avoided the limelight and returned to Rongqing from the border with the money my father hid to start a business. Due to the tight news in the past few years, Uncle Hua didn't dare to come to me in person, so he sent money into the card every month for me to study and live. And after so many years of hard work, Uncle Hua is now very accomplished. He is the boss of China Resources Company, Limited, and is worth tens of millions. But there is one thing I didn't expect, that is, the actual legal representative of China Resources Company, Limited turned out to be me. In other words, I am the real boss of China Resources. However, at that time, I was still very embarrassed and told Uncle Hua that I would not know anything, let me manage the company, and China Resources would definitely go out of business sooner or later. Uncle Hua smiled and said that this is his promise to my father, and he has him in management, and I only have to be the big boss behind the scenes. You can do whatever you want, so you don't have to be so nervous. After that, he also helped me buy a car and a house. But usually I also work in the company to help Uncle Hua drive a car or something, because I really don't understand real estate and don't have much interest in real estate. Once, when I was out of the company to do some business, I just walked out of the company gate when I saw a person who I didn't expect to walk towards the gate of China Resources Company. Mu Xia. I didn't expect to see her again here after almost 3 years. She is much more mature than before, she doesn't have the student spirit she used to have, and she is a little more charming and moving than before with a pair of big white long legs exposed under a long red dress. In 3 years, she has indeed changed a lot. And I seem to have changed even more. Things are not people, and the beauties of the past meet again, and they are already passers-by in a hurry. I wanted to greet her, but she seemed to be thinking about something, and I didn't bother her. But as I passed her, she suddenly stared at me. I smiled back at her. You. She seemed to have forgotten my name, and after not knowing what to call me, she changed her name and said with a smile, "Old classmate. Long time no see." I smiled and answered her. She nodded and smiled, and then said, "You know about our squad leader Chao Genoa's marriage on the 22nd of this month, right?" I smiled bitterly in my heart, thinking to myself that I really didn't know about it, and he didn't even inform me. Okay, I remember. By the way, you have come to China Resources to do something? I asked her. She raised the project list in her hand and said helplessly, "Our company wants to negotiate a business with China Resources, and now I am in charge of this business." By the way, you work at China Resources? I nodded in acknowledgement. She immediately looked at me with some excitement and said, "What are you doing in China Resources? Can you introduce your boss to me?" I'm about to die of worry about this business, and I can't even see your boss after coming here a few times. I was our boss's driver and drove for him. I'm going to pick him up in a moment. Do you need me to introduce him? I asked. I drove to and from work with Uncle Hua, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that I was his driver. And I'm going to get off work in a while. Uncle Hua has to go back to dinner with me, and it's nothing to introduce her. After all, we were college classmates for 4 years. Driver. Her eyes dimmed in anticipation when she heard that I was the driver. No need, I'll talk to your boss myself, we'll talk next time. After she hurriedly finished speaking to me, she stepped on her high heels and walked into the gate of China Resources with some disappointment. Looking at her back, I reached out and touched my nose, with a helpless wry smile on my face. Just now I thought that she was my classmate in my 4th year of college, so I wanted to help her. And if I mention her business to Uncle Hua, although I don't say that it will be successful in the end, Uncle Hua will definitely consider this business more in my face, and the chance of success will be much greater in the end. Now it was she herself who had given up this great opportunity. I don't think she will be able to see Uncle Hua when she goes in. After all, Uncle Hua is not something anyone can see if she wants to see him in the company. Not to mention her kind of business. But I'm not angry. After all, people are realistic, and only by being valuable can they get the enthusiasm of others. It's worthless, it's just an unknown passerby. This is the real social relationship. I drove home to get the information, and then I came to the company to pick up Uncle Hua and go home for dinner. In the car, I asked Uncle Hua about the business that Musia talked about, and wanted to know if Uncle Hua had seen her. What? Do you know her? Uncle Hua asked me from the co-pilot. I drove the car and nodded. It's a former classmate. The girl was persistent enough to stand outside the office in high heels and wait for me for 4 hours. However, we don't do our business in China Resources, although the amount is not large, but the risk of loss is quite large. Their company knew that we would not do it in China Resources, so they sent such an inexperienced little girl to try again. Uncle Hua said with a smile. I nodded and didn't ask any further. After all, I gave her a chance, but she didn't cherish it. And I don't want China Resources to lose money. Xiao Yuan, tell Uncle, do you like her? If so, Uncle will promise her to do this business. Uncle Hua asked me. I looked at Uncle Hua and said with a smile that she was an ordinary classmate, so I didn't need to help her or anything. When I got home, I found the same diary I had written when I was in college, and it clearly stated my love for Musia. I didn't throw away this diary, because I have always wanted to give it to Musia, but I have never found a chance. Maybe this time I can take the opportunity of Chao Genoa's marriage to give this diary to her, but it has been my wish for many years. Time passed day by day, and soon it was the day of the wedding of Chao Genoa, the 22nd squad leader. Actually, I cannot go to him when he gets married. After all, he didn't notify me. But Musia told me about it, and I knew it was not appropriate not to go, and I wanted to give her the diary. It was close to noon when I drove to the Huayang Hotel. At a bus stop, I met another classmate from my old school. Her name is Tao Yan, and her family is not wealthy. Her dad was sentenced for manslaughter when she was in high school, and maybe because she had a similar experience to mine, she was the only one in my class who was willing to talk to me, and we had a good relationship. I parked the car in front of her, then opened the window and said to her, "Old classmate, get in the car." She stared at me and was stunned for a moment before she said to me in surprise, "Zhang Yuan, are you also going to Chao Genoa's wedding?" I smiled faintly and nodded to her, and she got into the car with a look of confusion and surprise. She sat in the co-pilot and looked around, then said in surprise, "Zhang Yuan, you have made a lot of money, you have driven such a good car." I pulled the car out, turned to her and said, "No, I'm the driver of a company owner." He lent me the car when he knew I was going to my classmate's wedding today. Tao Yanyan stared at me, then sighed and said, Zhang Yuan, you have also changed, and you have begun to become hypocritical. Well, she thought I was deliberately borrowing the boss's Mercedes to pretend to be in front of my old classmates. I wanted to explain that the car was my own, but I just said that I was the driver, and if I continued to say that, she would definitely not believe it, and she would think that I was pretending. I immediately changed the subject and talked about her current situation and asked her what she was doing now. She had a helpless expression on her face, saying that she had just been fired by the company and was about to find a new job. In this regard, I only comforted her twice, and did not say anything like letting her come to work at China Resources. I can indeed help her so that she can have a good job at China Resources. But I'm not going to do that, because I never felt like I was superior to someone else right now. I found a parking lot near the Huayang Hotel, parked the car, and then prepared to walk towards the hotel with Tao Yanyan. She asked me why I didn't just drive over. I smiled and said, because I'm afraid that those old classmates will think like you. I borrowed a car to pretend to be a coworker. Tao Yanyan pouted. As soon as I arrived at the gate of Huayang Hotel, I saw many old classmates. And they were surrounding a person at this time. I have never forgotten this person, because he is my roommate Qian Feigang, a rich second generation who was rich and self-righteous. He was the one who took my diary to class at the beginning, and he was the one who said that I was a toad and wanted to eat swan meat. I hated him at first, but now I see him. But when I see him now, my heart is quite calm, maybe because I have grown up. I don't care about those things anymore. Fei Gang, this Wrangler is yours, it must be worth hundreds of thousands, right? A group of old classmates all surrounded Qian Feigang, looking at the car he drove and said enviously. It's not much, it's only more than 600,000 when all the cars are down. But it's quite comfortable to drive, and it's okay. Qian Feigang enjoyed the feeling of being surrounded by everyone, and said with a pretending to be forced. Wow, Fei Gang, your family is really rich, and hundreds of thousands of cars are willing to buy them for you. The surrounding classmates all made voices of envy, jealousy, and hatred. What is this? As long as I want, my dad can buy more than 1,000,000 Mercedes-Benz for me. He said again, pretending to be forced. I looked at all this helplessly, and followed Tao Yanyan towards that side. By the way, Fei Gang, I heard that your father's company is hiring accountants. You see that we have such a good relationship, why don't you tell your dad and let me go? A girl deliberately straightened up the huge and full chest and said to him with a coquettish look, and the huge chest was intentionally or unintentionally rubbed on his elbows. I want to go too, Fei Gang, we're all old classmates, you can help us. Another girl said. As soon as they opened their mouths, many people around them who had not yet been found hurriedly begged for money and steel. It's definitely no problem to get 2 or 3 people into my dad's company, it's just a matter of my words. But if so many of you want to go in, then I can't help it, after all, my father's company only recruits a few positions. After he finished speaking, he turned his head and immediately saw me and Tao Yanyan walking over, and then said with a smile, Yo, isn't this the son of a drug dealer and the daughter of a murderer? All the students around laughed when they heard this. My face suddenly became a little gloomy, and Tao Yanyan next to me didn't look good. But she has always been weak and has not refuted. I walked over with cold eyes and stood in front of Qian Feigang. Now we are not children, which jokes can be made and which jokes cannot be made. You are such a big person who has no pressure in his heart. When Qian Feigang saw me talking to him like this, his face immediately became a little angry. But something suddenly occurred to him, and he smiled and said, I remember that some toads used to want to eat swan meat. Alas, it's a pity that Musia was with me again in the end. And at that time, I played with her every day, and I had already played with her body. Do you still like her? If you still like her, then do it quickly, and you can chase after it in torn clothes. All the students around laughed again. I glared at Qian Feigang and clenched my fists with both hands. Tao Yen Yen hurriedly came over and pulled me away. And at this time, I saw Musia standing there, looking at Qian Fei Gong with an angry face. Qian Fei Gong obviously saw her too, looked at her coldly, and then smiled and went into the hotel with all his classmates. I smiled at her, and she nodded slightly and walked into the hotel. High cold as always. Maybe it's because of my job as a driver. Tao Yen Yen pulled my sleeve, I nodded slightly and went into the hotel. When I walked to the door, I took out the red envelope I had prepared and went over to write my name. Qian Fei Gong and they were chatting with the groom Chao Genoa over there. I went over to Tao Yen Yen, greeted Chao Genoa with a smile, and then handed him the red envelope in my hand, and said with a smile, "I wish you a happy wedding." Chao Genoa rubbed his fingers slightly on the red envelope, and then nodded politely to me. "Yo, the drug dealer's son also has to be courteous, Genoa, you have to be careful, don't this is the drug money that his parents used to earn," Qian Fei Gong said in a weird manner beside him. I was angry, and I immediately clenched my fist and was about to hit Qian Fei Gong. I couldn't help it. But Tao Yen Yen grabbed me and shook her head at me slightly. "Come, Genoa, let me help you see how rich the drug dealer's son is." Qian Fei Gong took the red envelope I gave from Chao Genoa's hand, opened it and raised the money in the red envelope and said, "It's really rich, 600. The squad leader who has been with me for 4 years got married, and you only gave 600 as a gift, which is really embarrassing, but I am embarrassed to come." Qian Fei Gong, you're mentally retarded, you're targeting me outside, and you're targeting me when you come in. You're awesome, what does it have to do with that you have money? I don't blush you, and I won't beg you to give me a penny. I couldn't help it anymore and yelled at him. I have a good temper, but that doesn't mean I can be bullied and humiliated again and again. Qian Fei Gong was also a little angry when he saw me scolding him, and he immediately wanted to beat me. Just when I was about to fight back, Chao Genoa started to be a peacemaker. He said that everyone is classmates, and today is the day of his wedding, and he persuaded us not to make trouble and happily attend his wedding. Tao Yen Yen also advised me to endure it. I glanced at Qian Fei Gong coldly, and Qian Fei Gong glared back at me with a sneer. At the beginning of the banquet, everyone who had a good relationship with Chao Genoa sat at the same table with him. Musia was also at the top table, and Tao Yen Yen and I sat below. It's full of people I don't know. Chao Genoa and Qian Fei Gong were talking and laughing at the table above, drinking wine and punching with other classmates. And Tao Yen Yen and I are like forgotten people, sitting down and eating without a bite. Then Chao Genoa took the bride down to toast. He asked me what I was doing, and I said that I was a boss's driver. He tapped me on the shoulder and said that if I wanted to go to his uncle's company in the future, I could ask him to help me. But I always felt that he said this with a deep contempt and ostentation in his tone. I smiled and nodded, not saying anything. The banquet ended in a tepid state, and most of them remained the same, especially Qian Fei Gong, which was still so bad and so unstoppable. And I didn't find the right time to give away the diary in my hand. Because Tao Yen Yen left in advance, I left the hotel alone. Looking at Qian Fei Gong surrounded by countless people, I shook my head helplessly. I went to the parking lot and drove the Mercedes out of the car, and I was ready to go back to the office. I was disappointed with this wedding. Such a classmate, maybe not. As soon as I drove out of the parking lot, the sky became very overcast, and then it started to rain heavily. I drove a short distance ahead when I saw Musia waiting for a bus at a bus stop to hide from the rain. I hesitated and drove over. Musia looked at me sitting in the Mercedes-Benz, and her face couldn't help but be a little surprised. "Get in the car, I'll take you back." I opened the car door and shouted to her. She was a little embarrassed, but it was raining so heavily and the bus didn't come, so she got into the co-pilot. "Is this your car?" she asked me in surprise as she sat in the car. I was stunned for a moment, thinking that if I told her that this was my own car, then she would definitely say that I was pretending to be like Tao Yen Yen. And I told her before that I was Uncle Hua's driver. I drove the car and said to her with a faint smile on my face, "How is it possible? This is my boss's car." He knew I was coming to the class reunion and asked me to drive his car so I wouldn't be late. Your boss is pretty good to you as a driver. Since you have met such a good boss, then you should be a good driver for him, and if you behave well, maybe he will find you a proper job in China Resources. Looking for a proper job at China Resources? Can I say that the entire China Resources company is mine? But she is also for my own good, and she cares about me. It warms my heart to get her attention. Well, I'll try harder. By the way, I asked my boss about your business for you a few days ago. He said that it was a loss-making project, and it was very risky to do it, and he would not face the risk of losing money, and promised you to do that project. I kindly said to her. She frowned, then sighed, and said helplessly, "It can't be helped. Now we are not college students who are still living on the living expenses of our parents in school. The people above gave me a task, and I had to complete it. After all, I also had to rely on this to earn money to eat." I have to say that she is indeed mature now, much more mature than the Musia I knew before. Or maybe she really felt the gap between the school and society. In school, she has living expenses every month, and she is surrounded by many admirers. She used to be like a princess, and she was cared for and liked by countless people. But out of society, her proud appearance can no longer bring her everything. She needs to work hard from the bottom, and she needs to earn money to support herself. Nowadays, there are many college students who can't accept such a gap at all, and they always have high dreams when they are in school, thinking that they can find a salary of tens of thousands of dollars a month and be able to work easily as soon as they leave the society. Even some people don't think about their future days. They just want to live in the present and live a stable and worry-free life with more than 1,000 living expenses per month. But when they went out of society, when they didn't ask their parents for money, they realized that money was not so easy to earn, and their original dreams were so naive. We chatted a lot on the way and had a great time. Musia is actually not as cold and impersonal as I used to think. She was actually just an ordinary girl, but I was too inferior at the beginning, and I felt that everyone had malicious intentions towards me, so I didn't dare to take the initiative to approach her. I drove Musia outside her neighborhood when a white Wrangler parked in front of me caught my eye. Musia couldn't help frowning when she saw the Wrangler parked in front of her, with a slightly panicked expression on her pretty face. I don't know why he is so afraid of Qian Feigong. Could it be that what Qian Feigong said at the wedding before is true? Musia has really been with him before? Qian Feigong, who was sitting in the car, was looking at us with a gloomy face at this time. His expression was surprisingly angry, and his face was dark. "It's still raining heavily, let's go, I'll drive you in." I didn't care about Qian Feigong's expression at this time, and said to Musia in a flat tone, and then drove towards the front again. Maybe I still have a little bit of nostalgia for Musia, but it's just because I liked her too much in the past and can't forget it. Now that we're adults, we don't think the same way, and I don't deliberately pursue her. And I sent her this time just out of the affection of my old classmates, and this is just a small thing that can be done casually. And Qian Feigong naturally doesn't care about his feelings. What he loves, I don't care about it at all. Qian Feigong saw that I ignored him, and that he was going to continue to send Musia into the community. His face became even more angry, and he drove towards us violently. Looking at his crazy and angry face, Musia screamed in fright, and she hurriedly asked me to brake. At this time, I was also a little anxious. I was afraid that Qian Feigong would really hit us. After all, he was arrogant and domineering, and he really did it. I braked suddenly, but Qian Feigong rushed over at a faster speed, and Qian Feigong stopped the car abruptly under Musia's frightened screams. At this time, the two cars almost collided together, and my heart couldn't help but beat fast. "Qian Feigong, you're crazy. I want you if you don't want to die. You want to die, get out of the way, and die." Out of the fright just now, I was also directly angry, and I scolded Chin Fei Gong while sitting in the car. Musia was also very angry and looked at Chin Fei Gong, who was sitting in the car. But Chin Fei Gong took a baseball bat and walked directly out of the car with a gloomy face. Standing in the heavy rain, he raised the baseball bat with a grim face and smashed it down on my car window. Musia shouted, and I hurriedly lay down to the right, protecting Musia under me. With a bang, the baseball bat hit the glass of my car, and there were many holes in the glass. "Damn, you're crazy." When I saw that the windows weren't smashed, I immediately yelled at him. He stood in the rain and scolded fiercely, "I'll let you, a poor woman, seduce the old woman, and I'm going to kill you today." He picked up the baseball bat in his hand and slammed it down on my side of the car window. "Damn!" I yelled, pulled the handle sharply, pushed the door open and pushed him out. He took a baseball bat and took several steps backwards. I slammed out of the car, and Musia sat in the car and hurriedly shouted at me not to go out. "You've been bitten by a mad dog, get out of the way and go crazy." I stood in the rain and scolded Chin Fei Gong. I really don't want to cause trouble, but if he is looking for trouble, then I'm not afraid of him. After all, I am no longer the timid and fearful Zhang Yuan I used to be. Uncle Hua has also taught me a lot in the past 2 years. He told me not to be cowardly when something happens. Fuck Lao Tzu, don't let yourself suffer, he will support me behind if something happens. Perhaps in the past 2 years, I have been influenced by Uncle Hua a lot, and my personality has become much more resolute. Chin Fei Gong looked at me angrily with a baseball bat. "Okay, you're good." The dick who was always bullied by me before, now dares to speak to me like this. "Why the fuck are you? Aren't you the son of a drug dealer?" "You poor dick, today I will tell you how big the gap is between you and me, Chin Fei Gong. I let you know that you're a fucking bug in my eyes, and I can easily twist you to death." "Who's the son of a drug dealer again?" I glared at Chin Fei Gong with red eyes and an angry expression. This incident has always been a taboo in my heart, and I was laughed at by everyone because of this incident before. Now, I don't allow anyone to say I'm the son of a drug dealer. At this time, Musia saw that I was going to fight with him, so she immediately got out of the car, stood in the rain and persuaded us, "Everyone is a classmate, there is no need to make things like this." "Zhang Yuan, thank you for sending me back, you can go, I can walk in by myself." "Stinky bitch, what do I have that is not as good as this poor dick? Are you a slut? You don't want me to be rich and handsome, you have to choose a bedbug whose parents are caught by drug dealers." Chin Fei Gong angrily scolded Musia, and looked at me with resentful eyes. "I tell you, she is my woman, even if she is played badly by me, I don't want it." "It's not your turn to pick up the junk." "Chin Fei Gong, what nonsense are you talking about? Who is your woman, who is played rotten by you?" Musia shouted at him excitedly. "I'll fuck you." I clenched my fist and rushed towards Chin Fei Gong, smashing it into his face with a single punch. When I heard him say that my parents were drug dealers again, I was immediately angry. "It doesn't matter who he is, I can't take it anymore." "Don't." When Musia saw me do it, she shouted in fright. Chin Fei Gong faced my fist. He didn't hide at all, maybe he looked down on me from the bottom of his heart. He picked up the baseball bat in his hand and slammed it into my shoulder. A sharp pain came from my shoulder, and my fist slammed into his face, knocking him back 2 steps. And my shoulder also hurt violently, but I didn't care about my shoulder at this time, standing in the heavy rain with red eyes and looking at Chin Fei Gong. Chin Fei Gong is about the same size as me. Maybe I couldn't beat him before, but because he has been overly drunk in the past 2 years, his body is weak, and I have learned a lot of fighting skills from Uncle Hua in the past 2 years, and now I am not afraid of him at all, and I am confident that I can win against him. But the most troublesome thing now is the baseball bat in his hand. With a weapon in hand, I am really not his opponent, and I will definitely suffer in the end if I continue to fight like this.